crisis after crisis has been hit on the people of the world since 9/11 happened. And we must understand that the techniques that are used abroad are also used at home in warfare. And we heard the term shock and awe. Shock and awe on the hard force level, as they call it, is bombs, all kinds of acoustic equipment to nullify enemies, scare the hell out of them through voice to skull and so on, which was used in Gulf War I, and it's all over the British media. But you can also use shock and awe on your domestic people again. You do it by crisis after crisis until the public are so terrified. See, the average person has a sort of confidence that they build up where they think, I can manage most things that come my way. Whatever little crisis in my life, what happens to other people, I can deal with. When all those around you are getting scared at the same time as you because they're losing their jobs, they've been threatened with pandemics, terrorists everywhere, terrifying people to even get on subways, and so on. And all those around you, as I say, are also in the same boats. You tend to be more easily directed by the powers that be that come out and speak with authority and confidence over you.
Well, I think it's just routine. I think that statists always want to, generate fear in the people, whether it's economic fear or fear of somebody invading and want to attack. Because then if you don't go along with what the government tells you, then they can paint you as being unpatriotic and un-American. So in order for them to survive, and them means those people who like big government and statism and world empires, they have to have support from the people. And the people will tend to give the support if they get frightened enough, like after 9/11, they were quite willing, you heard the statement, well, I know I have to give up my freedom, but I'd rather them do that than be killed, and they were willing to sacrifice their freedoms. So fear is the tool of the thugs in government, the authoritarians.
In his 1997 book, The Grand Chessboard, national security and foreign policy luminary Zbigniew Brzezinski argued that, quote, in the absence of a comparable external challenge, American society may find it much more difficult to reach agreement regarding foreign policies that cannot be directly related to central beliefs and widely shared cultural ethnic sympathies, and that still require an enduring and sometimes costly imperial engagement, unquote. Brzezinski is a stalwart in policy-making circles, his tenure stretching all the way back to his role as National Security Advisor in the Jimmy Carter administration.
Zbigniew Brzezinski is a petty Polish aristocrat. He represents a social class called the Szlachta, the lower aristocrats. In German, it's Milchadel, milk nobility, the lowest. And he was trapped in Canada by the Hitler-Stalin Pact. His father was a diplomat serving the government of Pilsudski and this guy Smidley Ridge, right-wing authoritarian Polish governments in the 1930s. He then went to McGill University. He would have gone to Britain. I think he wanted to go to Britain, but he couldn't do it because of various technical considerations. So he then got into Harvard and eventually became the head of the Soviet Affairs Institute at Columbia. I believe that is where he picked up Barack Hussein Obama, Barry Soetoro, between 1981 and 1983, when both Brzezinski and Barry Soetoro were on the same campus, probably in the same department. Look at Obama's graduating thesis, Soviet military disarmament. That's nuclear disarmament. That's absolutely critical because it's a topic that has Brzezinski written all over it.
Brzezinski is certainly aware of the utility of psyops. In the late 1970s, he was making trips to Pakistan to embolden Afghan rebels in their fight against the Soviets.
U.S. National Security Advisor Brzezinski flew to Pakistan to set about rallying resistance. He wanted to arm the Mujahideen without revealing America's role.
For someone who regularly denounces Manichaean attitudes of reducing the world to concepts of good and evil, he had no qualms about invoking abstract Manichaean forces when it came to inspiring the Mujahideen.
That land over there is yours You'll go back to it one day because your fight will prevail and you'll have your homes and your mosques back again because your cause is right and God is on your side.
More than 30 years later, he continues to favor psychological methods in geopolitical conflicts.
If there is a change of regime in Iran, there's a greater chance of accommodation. And I think that is to be fervently wished for. But that requires patience, intelligent manipulation, moral support, but no political interference.
So Brzezinski was, of course, the head of the National Security Council under Jimmy Carter. He is the guy who successfully played the Afghan Mujahideen against the Soviet Union. He has boasted that he lured the Soviets into invading Afghanistan by sending in U.S. Special Forces teams in the summer of 1979, 6 months before the Soviets invaded the country. He's also the guy who played Saddam Hussein Iraq against Khomeini's Iran for the purpose of destroying both countries, but of propping up both dictatorships at the same time. In other words, the Khomeini regime by 1980 was showing signs of collapse. So Brzezinski said, all we need is a foreign threat. So let's play Iraq against Iran and we'll keep both of them going. He was also a supporter of the Pol Pot genocidalist regime, and he's generally known for the traditional imperialist method of using one country as a tool against another so that you don't have to get involved and you don't have to face military defeat and all the expense.
In the Grand Chessboard, Brzezinski points out that, quote, as America becomes an increasingly multicultural society, it may find it more difficult to fashion a consensus on foreign policy issues, except in the circumstances of a truly massive and widely perceived direct external threat, unquote.
Shock and awe, as I say, is a technique of making a person and a whole population punch-drunk. And each one of those fears, you understand, the average person can handle one major crisis in their personal life, maybe two at the same time. It's understood in psychology and many studies that if you have maybe 3 to 4 crises hitting you personally in your life at the same time, you will literally go into an incredible depression, a reactive depression. You can't cope. That's understood. There's not one of these crises that we're being told about that you personally can do anything about. What can you do about terrorism if it really exists all over the place? It's out of your hands, you're helpless. What can you do about a coming pandemic? It's out of your hands, you're helpless. What can you do about a nuke getting set off in New York Harbor or wherever? You can't, you're helpless. The message you're getting is that you're utterly helpless to defend, help, or save yourself. That is complete shock and awe tactic.
This method of using psychological means to achieve political objectives is also called soft power, as contrasted with the hard power methods of traditional military force.
And that's what my colleague Bob Gates talks about as soft power, what Condi Rice talks about as soft power. It's changing the dynamic overseas and here at home, but really less of a problem here at home than overseas, to shift the tide against al-Qaeda. It's very difficult to do because the government can't do it overtly. We've got to encourage the communities in which these ideologues are recruiting. Frankly, I'm just reverse engineering what Hezbollah does. What Hezbollah and Hamas do is they take some of their money and they try to build social, certainly Hezbollah, social assistance networks as a way of getting the allegiance of the population, which enables them to carry out their acts of violence. So those are the 3 elements. Continuing with the stuff that we do that is hard power, including some of the things we do overseas, but also working on the soft power front and working to make our aid and assistance go a little bit further.
Massive psychology and warfare techniques in psychology has been used across the planet to make us succumb to fear and crises, as I say, and none of which we can actually do anything about on an individual level. Therefore, the leaders are presented to us on screen with uniforms or business suits and ties as politicians who speak with confidence, all scripted, of course, and they seem to have everything under control. You're now basically a fearful slave looking up to the powerful master to defend and protect you. That's the simple technique of it.